Chapter 1. Connor Larkin stood with the other passengers waiting to enter the Greyhound bus. The nighttime travelers were exactly as he remembered from his early journeys. They were silent and they were weary, and many of them treated the bus as their bed for the night. As Connor climbed on board, he knew he was doing the right thing. He intended to make a complete break. Nothing could be further from his current existence than this. He took the first window seat where the one next to him was still empty. Connor was 6'3" and linebacker lean, and he didn't want to crowd somebody who was already settled in for the night run. 3 minutes later, a woman who almost matched his size stopped and asked, "You mind?" "Not a bit," he replied. She must have seen he meant it, for she offered up the best smile she could manage. Night buses held to an established cadence. Soon as the doors sighed shut, the chatter faded. People settled in as best they could and went quiet. Those who didn't care to sleep talked in respectful murmurs. Even the fretting baby was soon silenced. The bus rumbled its way out of the downtown Los Angeles terminal, stopped twice for additional travelers, then joined the freeway and headed north. There had once been a time when Connor had loved nothing more than a long bus ride. He had just turned 16 and was trapped in an imploding family. Connor had not just been escaping. He was building his dreams. He was traveling toward a tomorrow all his very own. He had not thought of those trips in years. The tires hummed and the night comforted. Connor reveled in being anonymous, at least for a few hours. He had no idea what he would find at the end of this journey, nor, just then, did he much care. He stared at his reflection in the dark glass to his right and decided that running away was the first thing that had felt good in far too long. The woman leaned over and jammed Connor hard against the armrest. She knew what she'd done and grimaced an apology. Connor shrugged in reply. She set a tablet in her lap, plugged in earbuds, and said, "This is the only chance I get to watch my shows." Connor watched her connect to the bus Wi-Fi and then dial into the #1 LA Entertainment cable show. That meant everything he was running from flashed up in brilliant color. The program's anchor was a cable lollipop named Peyton Steen. LA was full of Peytons. Her program and Hello magazine had been granted exclusive coverage of Connor's main event in return for the agency's publicist having the right to edit everything prior to release. The image shifted from Peyton's report to a clip of Connor's most recent appearance in a U.S. drama. He played the bad guy, as usual. The 30-second spot showed him being caught by the hero, who launched into a furious assault that ended with Connor being thrown off a bridge. The camera followed his free fall into the torrent below, then cut back to Peyton's brilliant smile. Connor should have been accustomed to seeing himself on screen. His acting coach forced Connor to watch and learn and critique and grow. However, the required detachment was lost to him now. The next clip came from earlier that same day. Connor watched as he and his fiancée emerged from the intimate engagement party attended by 700 of their closest friends. They had rehearsed this next act 5 times until the lights and expressions and cadence were camera perfect. Connor saw his eyes go round as 2 tuxedo-clad waiters pulled the quilted covering off his engagement present, then shout with delight as his fiancée offered him the gold-plated key to his very own Maserati Ghibli. Then the woman on the bus noticed Connor watching and pulled the bud from one ear. Connor's dread rose with a bile in his throat. He knew what was going to happen next, clear as if it was scripted in the slightly stale air. She would cry out his name, she would wake up the entire bus, then his one chance of escape would be stripped away. Instead, she turned in her seat, looked straight at him, and said, "You think this is for real?" "Excuse me? A guy this good-looking marries an heiress? She gives him a Ferrari? And they live happily ever after?" "Maserati," Connor corrected. "What?" "The car. It's a Maserati." She waved that aside. "Who ever heard of such a thing? I mean, That's not real life, is it? It has to be something they cooked up inside their executive suites. Like, hey, let's find this perfect guy and this super rich girl, and we'll have this bash at the Hilton, Beverly Hills Hotel. And we'll invite all the beautiful people, and then we'll put it on the TV. And next week, we'll show the wedding. The wedding is in 5 days, Connor said. See, that's just it. I don't think there's going to be any wedding. Connor was an actor. He was paid to pretend at emotions. So right now, he nodded slowly, like he was giving the woman's comments a lot of serious thought. He said, "You may be right about that. You like? I could turn on the sound and we can watch this together." "Thanks," Connor said. "That's really kind, but I've seen it already." Every time Connor glanced over, there he was on the woman's tablet. She kept scrolling back and forth between the various episodes, living the impossible dream. Closing his eyes no longer blocked out the memories. Peyton, the cable lollipop, had a breathless way of speaking as long as the camera was rolling. However, in the 7 sessions they'd had together, she had not spoken once with Connor after the lights went off. Not even a hello. Her attitude had said it all. Connor was just another momentary episode there to suck dry and discard. His fiancée was amazingly adept at handling the LA publicity machine. As a result, people like Peyton treated her as a keeper. Then he corrected himself. His ex-fiancée. They had not officially broken up yet. When Connor would fail to show for the rehearsal dinner in 4 days' time, he assumed the lady would bid him a tearful farewell. In front of the global press, no doubt it would be her finest hour. Connor's stop was the juncture where the 101 joined with the Pacific Coast Highway. Steep hills cut jagged slices from the night sky. From here to the ocean was 14.5 miles of a single snaking road. Miramar, his destination, occupied a bowl where the cliffs eased back from the sea. Between Miramar and where Connor stood were two valleys given over to vineyards and avocados and rich verdant farmland. He was standing in a parking lot shared by a 7-Eleven, a diner, and a Motel 6. Connor waved to the woman watching him from the window and waited while the bus pulled away. Now that he had arrived, he had no idea what to do next. His satchel felt like it weighed 200 pounds. The night air seemed impossibly heavy. Connor had done nothing for 5 days except prepare for the next shoot with his beautiful bride-to-be. But he had also not slept. Exhaustion threatened to smother him. He was tempted to take a room for the night, but highway motel chains tended to want troublesome items like IDs. Plus, Connor knew he ran the risk of getting stuck there. Just lay on the bed for days, trapped by the vice of so many wrong moves. Connor hefted his satchel and crossed the lot and entered the diner. The little restaurant had a slow, end-of-watch feel. Connor sat at the counter and ate a moderately good meatloaf, but the green beans had cooked to limp submission, and the potatoes were barely okay. Connor had worked in his family's restaurant until he was old enough to escape their constant bickering. He had learned early and well the artwork involved in making a fine meal. The food had been very good, and the patrons had remained loyal, at least for a while. In the end, the screeches emerging every time the kitchen doors swung open had driven the patrons away. It felt comforting in a strange and disembodied way to mull over his past while eating. Normally, Connor kept such ruminations buried deep. Connor was so engrossed in the lost years that he did not notice the cop until he heard someone ask, "You coming or going?" The counter curved slightly, and the cop had taken a stool 3 away from Connor, granting him a position where he could study Connor's face. The police officer was ugly as a bull elephant, lumpish and big-boned, with features creased by childhood scars. Connor replied, "Coming, I hope." The policeman lifted his coffee cup at the waitress's approach, nodded his thanks for the refill, and slurped noisily, all without taking his eyes off Connor. "You got friends around here?" "Not yet." He squinted, a sudden tightening of his features. Connor realized he had just seen the guy smile. What brings you here? Such conversations had been a fairly constant part of his early years. A good-looking kid on the road, traveling by overnight bus. Cops were always on the lookout for runaways. Connor had learned that honesty was the safest move. He said, I came for a weekend on one of the ranches up in the hills. The place didn't suit me, so I spent all my free time in town. I didn't want to leave. Connor shrugged. Now I'm back. Which ranch? Hearst Highlands. The cop whistled. That place runs what, a couple thousand a night? Something like that. The cop took in Connor's faded t-shirt, worn jeans, woven rope belt, hiking boots. You were working up there? Connor made do with a nod. The cop picked up his bill, swung his stool around, and stood. Let's say we settle up. I'll give you a lift into town.